You ever heard of the story of the haunted pumpkin patch? Born from the blood and hatred of 1,000 deaths, the pumpkin carved with a twisted face into something alive, something hungry for flesh. Picture this. It's a crisp autumn night. There's screams of livestock cutting through the air, and a twisted, grinning pumpkin moves through the fields with a hunger you can't even imagine. The ground cold beneath your feet, the smell of damp earth, and the unsettling rustle of corn stalks swaying even though there's no wind. Well, tonight, we're going there. So settle in, because this isn't just another ghost story. It's one of those tales that gets under your skin. Hello, Virgil here. The past week's been a bit of a roller coaster. I've been freelancing for the Bethnal Archives for about 7 years now, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that paranormal never sleeps. The archive's in the basement of a nondescript building, with walls lined with old books and artifacts that carry the scent of dust and parchment. The air always feels a little heavy down there, like the weight of history pressing down. I had a case on Tuesday involving a haunted piano. Turns out the spirit of an old composer was trapped inside, angry at anyone who dared to play his music wrong. The piano room smelled like old wood and polish, and every time someone hit a sour note, you could hear the keys rattle angrily, almost like a piano was hissing at them. Then Wednesday came around and I had to check out a poltergeist in Acne. The poor old lady there thought her house was cursed, but turns out it was just some old runes carved into the attic beams. Easy fix, but a lot of dust. The attic was quite cramped, filled with forgotten boxes, and every time I moved the floor creaked like it might give way. Now, Halloween approaches. We've officially hit Amber Alert. Security's been posted in the building, just in case of any breaches. This time of year, well, it draws things in. Strange things. So with all that, I figured it was a good time to tell you this story. The tale of cursed soil and a pumpkin patch you definitely wouldn't want to visit. I don't get spooked easily. After all, got level 3 clearance from the Met, and I've been chasing the paranormal for years. You know, I've seen my fair share of weird stuff. But even I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling I got reading through these notes about that patch of land somewhere in Greater London. It was a cursed place that seemed to have a taste for violence. The description spoke of a strange stillness and emptiness that seemed to suck all the warmth out of the air, and when the air would blow, it felt hollow, like it wasn't really touching anything. I'm sitting here at my desk at the archive, pulling out my notebook as I recount this legend. The room's dim, just a single desk lamp casting long shadows across the shelves of ancient tomes. The heating system is humming faintly, and every now and then an old wooden beam creaks above me. Now, this is in the heart of Greater London. There was once a battlefield where two great armies clashed, the Saxons and the native Britons, locked in a desperate struggle. The ground was soaked with blood, and the earth seemed to tremble with the weight of its violence, absorbing the hatred, the anger, the pain. They saw the soil itself turn black from the darkness that seeped into it, and over time, the land was abandoned, the battlefield forgotten, and nature reclaimed it, as it always does. But the air there carries a strange metallic tang, almost like blood even after all these years, and when it rains, the ground gives off the smell that makes you think of rusted iron and something more primal. Years later, farmers settled there, unaware of its dark history beneath their feet. They tilled the soil, planted their crops, but they didn't know what kind of darkness lay dormant beneath it, waiting for the right moment to resurface. The fields were lush, almost unnaturally so, with corn stalks that grew taller than a man and pumpkins that seemed to swell overnight. It was as if the land itself was trying to hide its true nature beneath a veneer of abundance. This story feels like it's taken a life of its own, every piece begging to be solved. You know, the air here seems cold now, like a chill's creeping in from the past, something unseen just beyond the edge of the light. One autumn, a man named Thomas decided to carve out one of the largest pumpkins in his field. Maybe it was a whim, maybe it was just something he thought would be fun. A scarecrow with a pumpkin for a head to ward off the birds. And there was something about the land. The darkness had seeped into every root, every crop, and that pumpkin wasn't just any pumpkin. That night, the pumpkin came alive, its carved face twisted into something malicious, something evil. It slithered off the scarecrow's post, moving through the fields, driven by hunger, an insatiable thirst for blood. The wind howled through the fields, carrying a scent of damp earth and something else, something rotten, something wrong. Even here in the archives, surrounded by the dusty tomes and the comforting hum of the old lights, it feels like the shadows grow a little bit deeper, like the darkness is listening in. Thomas woke up in the night to the screams of his livestock. The sounds echoed through the cold night, bleeding with the rustling of the cornstalk, making it impossible to tell where the noise was coming from. When he ran outside, he found the thing feasting on his flock. Its grin wide, its eyes glowing with an unnatural red light, and the air was thick with a coppery smell of blood, and the ground beneath his feet felt wet and soft, like the earth itself was bleeding. In a panic, Thomas grabbed a pitchfork, tried to fend it off, but the creature, it was so strong, and with a laugh that could chill a man's soul, it knocked him to the ground. As Thomas lay there, the world around him seemed to blur. He could hear the crunch of his flock being devoured, the creature's grotesque chewing echoing through the otherwise silent night. His heart pounded, the icy grip of fear paralysing him as he watched the thing move closer, its grin widening with every passing second. He could feel the cold seeping into his bones, the air thick with the rancid stench of decay. And as the creature lunged, Thomas's vision darkened. He thought it was the end, but then a burst of light cut through the gloom. His wife, her face pale but determined, emerged from the farmhouse, armed with a flaming torch. She thrust it into the creature's form, and for a moment, everything seemed to stop. The fire hissed, and as it met the unnatural flesh, the creature screamed, retreating back into the shadows, its form melting away into the darkness. Thomas survived, but he was never the same again. They say he went mad from what he saw, that he could feel the darkness still watching him. Even after the pumpkin rotted away, the darkness just didn't disappear. It went back into the earth, biding its time, waiting for the next fool to stumble across it. The fields were never quite the same. They seemed emptier, quieter. Birds no longer landed there, and the wind seemed to avoid it, leaving an eerie stillness in its wake. And now, here we are. People are still scared of that land, and maybe for a good reason. That soil is tainted. You can feel it when you stand there. It's like something's breathing beneath your feet. So, this is Virgil from the Bethnal Archives, documenting the cursed land of Greater London. We're looking at a possible Class 4 residual curse, something that's lingered here since an ancient battlefield was soaked in hatred. The darkness doesn't rest. It waits. But the question is, who or what will find it next? As I glance around this archive, the quiet settling deeper as the night wears on, the room does feel heavy, the air thick with the echoes of the past. I'll be filing this one in section Delta -3, Cursed Earth, Haunted Lands. And if you're listening, remember, some places aren't meant to be disturbed. Not everything buried should be unearthed. And that's all we got time for today, folks. With Halloween upon us, be careful. The veil is thin, and the things that lurk beneath the surface are always searching for a way back in. So if you find yourself out in the fields tonight, or even just walking home through the dark streets, keep an eye out for anything unusual, a shadow that moves when it shouldn't, a chill in the air that feels too cold, a strange rustling sound with no source. The darkness is restless, and it might just be looking for someone to invite it in. Sleep well. But stay wary, my friends. Halloween is the night where anything can happen.